Hello, everybody. I am Abdi Lajavadi, your host, and thank you for watching another episode of Education for a Better World. I'm delighted and privileged on having today's guest, my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Sally Rabi, to be our guest. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you very much, Abdi, for giving me this opportunity to join you in this nice and interesting podcast. I look forward to our interesting discussion.
I appreciate it. Me too. I am excited to have you here, as I'm sure our audience are going to enjoy learning more about you and your perspective on a number of topics that I think we all are excited to learn onto how to be a better educator. How can we create a better world through education? And you're a wonderful guest for that. So maybe we can start learning more about you, Sally, if you don't mind. Tell us about you.
I'd be happy to share my background. I consider myself a citizen of the world because of the exposure that I've had since my childhood. I was born in the UAE, where my father was working back in the 70s with establishing the health. He was he was a doctor. And then we left from the UAE to the States. So I started my early childhood education, elementary education in the States in North Carolina. And then afterwards, we moved back to the Middle East, where I spent more time in education studying as a student. And then I left to the UK, where I did my postgrad education for several years. I also had an opportunity to work in different areas, different locations during my career as a teacher. So I began my career as an educator, as a teacher, as a language teacher specifically. I worked in the UAE, in Jordan, in the UK, in Wales, in the US, parts of US as well, on different projects. I then branched off into my career into publishing, which combined a merger between education and developing specific content for learners and students across the world. I have almost 20 years experience in educational publishing, working with different countries, state sector reform projects, working with different ministers of education, policymakers, education providers, and so forth. And the main objective of all the projects that we've worked on was creating education for a better world for these students and improving their social status, their learning opportunities, and their exposure. At the end of the day, education serves a purpose, which is delivering knowledge and skills to these students. And as educators, it's our job to give them a difference, make a difference to their lives, and contribute to this change.
Absolutely. Okay. Well said. Well said. Thank you for sharing that very wonderful journey that you have had, and that kind of gets me to ask you, uh, with your vast knowledge, both on your experience from what you have seen in your life experience in education, both personal as well as professional. What are some of the things that teachers can do to be more effective, to make more of their classroom to be fun and exciting, and end of the day have more positive impact on the kids that they are responsible?
I would think that mostly where this is applicable worldwide and globally is because we're focusing on the learner, on the student. It's making them, one, motivated, and we do that through letting them know why they're learning this or engaging them. It's very important for these students, for the children, to know the impact or the outcome. And sometimes it cannot be achieved directly, especially when you're dealing with young learners. When probably at a higher level in higher ed, it's easier because they're there, they know what they want to study, they know what they want to learn. But in K to 12, you have to use practical, engaging opportunities to engage the learners, have them feel the difference that this learning opportunity would make to their lives. So basically motivating them and engaging them and making them realize the difference that this could make through real world problems, through skill-based learning opportunities, and engagement. Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, as you know, again, part of what challenges exist is when you're a teacher, and it doesn't matter in what arena, in elementary or in high school or college, university, you're supported by management, right? This management team makes a lot of decisions sometimes because of who they need to report to, both their superiors as well as accreditation agencies, Department of Education or ministries of education. So there is some limitation on what they can do, right?
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that they could do in support of their teachers and the students to create the environment
Right.
that is more conducive to effective learning, on what's the kind of things you said?
Yes. Yes. Well, that's right. A lot of the issues that teachers face globally, and part of my specialty is capacity and professional development of teachers in developing their skills. And I've noticed that there are a lot of restrictions and limitations to what the teacher can provide within the classroom, within the borders of the classroom. So we try to recommend that there be room for project work, but that which is regulated and modulated, where there's structure and follow up against a set number of standards or learning outcomes that they need to address. And once they have that link, which requires preparation, of course, before going into the classroom, but once they've created that link, it becomes more practical for the teacher to get the students to engage in the classroom. I'm just going to give you as an example, one of the high school programs that I was working on. I jumped in teaching a class for literature. I was on a session for observation, and the students were just reading aloud, reading aloud, reading aloud. And I asked the teacher that, of course, they're supposed to complete a novel by the end of the semester. And I told her, surely not all of the students are going to have a chance to read aloud, but the objective behind reading this text is to reflect on the content, read between the lines, discuss the mood and the emotion, the characters, the plot. So why don't you give them a set of questions that they could read and look for answers for at home before coming to class, and use the classroom as an opportunity to discuss how they felt, their responses, why they felt that the answers for this were so. And this way you could ensure that all the students at least read a certain number of pages. They've gotten a response. You could have a lot of group work and engagement within the classroom. And even the students themselves, they become more engaged because they know they're going to be asked. I mean, when they're reading aloud in the classroom, not all of them are going to be asked to read. So some of them might slack off, or some of them might, try to avoid being called on. In this way, you impose that interaction, that work prior to coming into the classroom.
No,
So,
that's a wonderful, wonderful methods of getting more from the students. And students, just like anything, they like to share their perspective, because that is something that I think gives them value for what they know, or what their opinion is, and that's a very good technique. Um, so I was going to, I mean, right now when we look at the world is changing, so rapidly. I mean, for the last 10, 15, 20 years, the changes have picked up momentum, right? If anything is a good measure in the last few years, because of this pandemic and what the whole world went through, especially in education, right? You and I were talking offline about all of these individuals, that had overnight gone to distance learning, that happened globally. Uh, how do we, in a sense, prepare our students in this day and age where technology is part of our life, everybody's life? It don't matter what part of the world you're in.
Mhm.
And yet, the knowledge is exploding, at a rate that we never have experienced in our
Yeah,
lifetime.
yeah, yeah. That's right. I mean, technology has given an opportunity to individuals, whether they're students in schools or in higher education, or those continuing their professional development. it's given a lot of access to content and information online, which is freely accessible. Before, it was always limited to the publishers, what they would publish, the textbooks that they would have access to. They'd have to go to libraries and so forth. The good thing with technology, I mean, I've seen it as an added value in education, because the revolution for education is still, it's moving towards the peak at the moment. Whereas when you look at other industries, for example, banking or tourism, for example, before, you'd have to go visit a bank, sit with the personal banker, or go to the teller, request, do that transaction in person. So it was always institutionalized. Same thing with schooling, with institutions. All the students, they have to go to an institution and be physically present, which comes at a cost. There's a lot of head over costs that involves covering costs for the institution itself, the field, the books, the printing, and all the resources that come with it. Technology has created possibly an opportunity now, which is giving access to credible, reliable sources of information, which are now being benchmarked. This is what Intellectus Education is also working on. But it's allowing an opportunity to revolutionize the learning space, where learners can access for example, a platform. They can learn at their own pace. They can learn at a time of their convenience. They can learn, have an equal opportunity to access quality education, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their ability to afford being able to speak to a specialist or a native speaker pertaining to a certain language, whether English, Spanish, or French, or Mandarin, and so forth. So there's a lot of accessibility. I think the risk at the moment is we still don't have enough educators who are taking the lead in revolutionizing this educational approach. So far, it's been coming from an IT perspective, or a perspective that's working on the business opportunity, where there's a lot of open educational resources that are open freely for public access, but there's no regulation, or there's no bridging or benchmarking for the content. And I feel that there's a strong need for educators to work together, those with experience like yourself, who've been leading education and improving the standards of education globally and in the US, and collaborating with other educators globally as well, to develop this content, this credible, reliable, systematic content that's accessible worldwide, because this is a need globally, to deliver new learning opportunities that are quality. They are of equal standard in terms of who can access it, and that allow this opportunity for these learners to access this new type of information. And eventually down the road, where we could use virtual reality, augmented reality, all in blended learning. And then where institution-based learning would focus mainly on skill-based learning, learning with your peers, engaging in project work, developing that personal social perspective of learning within the school grounds.
Oh, well said, well said. Thank you so much. One other thing that I wanted to kind of talk to you, because it relates not only to the students, it relates to professionals at all levels, teachers, administrators, everyone alike. And that is mentorship. Yeah, having mentors.
Mhm.
And how people would start. How would maybe institutions have programs where they can, promote mentorship, and really put something in place where individuals get used to having mentors when they're in a school, or later on when they enter a field as professionals, and use this in a way of benchmarking and improving their life and their outcome that they're looking for. So what's your perspective on that? And if you have some experience firsthand on this, how would individual or institutions go about putting something like this in place?
Mhm. I mean, mentorship is key in the educational revolution, I would say, because even the role of the teacher is changing from being an active, interactive, in-person teacher to more of a facilitator to that learning. However, there aren't many people who have the expertise or the background who can immediately make that shift, make that transition, make that focus on developing learner skills and so forth. We've worked on several projects where we've had using an online platform. Of course, we'd have international consultants who have specific expertise in a specific area mentor a group of educational practitioners in a different country who are focused on building their capacity and skills in a specific area. That includes in all areas, whether it's improving standards, as in the shift from like with the NGSS, the science standards, the Common Core State standards, any type of standards or benchmarking that countries are shifting towards, whether in the US or elsewhere. We'd have that online mentorship program going on where they would meet regularly online, utilizing discussion forums, utilizing social platforms, and also sharing experiences and being able to bring in the mentor who could also deliver practical, demo their experience, demonstrate how they deliver this learning opportunity or learning expertise practically. And it's been proven to be effective because a lot of teachers, I've dealt with a lot of post-crisis countries who come from several years of backgrounds in war, and you feel that many teachers haven't had the opportunity for capacity development or professional development. Even the education administrators at the ministries of education or in the state sector who are involved in policy, key policy reform and so forth, they are all seeking, they really want to learn and gain more knowledge or information or expertise on how they can improve outcomes, how they can improve results, how they can improve frameworks, and they're always looking for opportunities. I feel with the online transition and with technology, with that blended approach, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for that exchange of experiences. And at the end of the day, as we discussed in our previous discussions, the interests globally of all countries on a national scale is improving national performance statewide, is improving standards, is improving learning outcomes and student performance. So it's always needed for that shared experiences and even opportunities to bridge from K to 12 to higher ed. How do we do that? How do we choose the schools for our learners? How do we put them in summer, for example, summer programs or internships? What approach do we utilize? They're all now on this platform that needs to be, there has to be an exposure to share experiences globally and interact with each other. It's no longer restrained or constricted to a certain group of people. And we hope, through collaboration that we could also introduce this working with, for example, Pro Education Group on these opportunities and mimicking these approaches that you've had so far.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that. One thing you mentioned, and I think along with mentorship is a really an important aspect to talk about is that internship that you just alluded to. And especially because these days you can even have, virtual internship.
Mhm.
It is really something that, can play a big role in preparing individuals for new industries, new roles that they want to take in life and get that confidence that is necessary, be a teacher, be it an administrator, or being individuals that require continuing education to improve themselves. Now, I want you to talk about your organization and what you do that is so wonderful. I want the world to know of your great work that you do. But do you have any suggestions on some of the steps that people can put in place in offering internship to their students and their team?
Mhm, mhm. Thank you for your kind words, firstly. And regarding the it's becoming a very popular approach to learning, whether it's at school level K to 12, whether it's for professional practitioners. And we've been seeing lately that there's a lot of demand for education administrators who are being requested or being assigned for internships for 3-4 week internships up to 6 or 8 weeks. There's a lot of preference for full board, so in-person internships, or the blended learning approach where they have that chance to work online, but still have the ability to go visit the institutes and share these on-site experiences. I feel that I also feel it's very useful. I mean, I've worked on a similar program in the UK and in Wales, where we'd have teachers from Europe come into Wales and then visit different institutes and sites, where they would take this as a professional building opportunity, where there would be workshops, a lot of training going on. But besides that, they'd also have site visits to see things in practice, to see how other institutes, other classrooms, other educational settings, meet with other practitioners elsewhere and engage with them, discussing either common challenges or different opportunities that come avail. And I feel now, given the educational reform and given the transition, there's going to be an increase in the demand for internships, because education or learning will be possibly addressed mainly through online platforms. However, the internship opportunity gives that a more practical sense or feel of learning engagement for students, whether they're at high school or higher ed level, or within the professional capacity serving to represent their country. And I feel, I mean, with Intellectus, we're working to support different state sector departments, different ministries of education on being able to meet and share expertise with global expertise, who are more advanced or who are advancing or sharing experiences in terms of the challenges that they faced, or they're implementing something new that hasn't yet been considered. They're studying different areas or fields of study. As you said, there are new domains now within the field of education. So what we used to study or teach 10 years ago has changed drastically. So imagine the shift. So there's this increasing change, and internships allow for that practical touch and feel. And on most, as we were discussing before, I feel that there are two key areas within any country or any on a national scheme, which is health and education. And these are two core components for any sustainable community to thrive and to grow, with it being developing other work opportunities, job opportunities. And education is key, where you cannot hold back. You always need to see what's coming out. You always need to be exposed to the growth, to the changes that are happening, and seek these opportunities elsewhere, to see what's going on, and bring that expertise and that knowledge back home to be able to re-implement, and then use a mentorship program where they could continue to collaborate with the mentors that they've met during the internship opportunity, and to see the effective implementation long term. Yes. Yeah.
I thank you very much. One thing I want to share with the audience is, I find myself to be privileged to have had the chance to get into education. And I know we have talked about how grateful we are for being teachers and being in this environment. It's truly a wonderful industry to join. And I think if you are thinking about getting into education, there is a tons of opportunities that are coming to life all over the world for great teachers of the future, professors of futures that are in charge of nurturing and training our youth for better tomorrow. At the same time, if you have been a teacher and done this greatly, well, there is a lot of work to be done. What has been done is appreciated, is wonderful, but we do need to think about how can we move in, not to 21st century, we're already here, but 20 and a half century, 21st and a half century, because we really need to think ahead and try to learn how we can be effective in this day and age with all of these tools and possibilities that you shared with us. I think the area that you touched on, dealing with virtual reality or augmented reality. This is wonderful, tools that our educators can use in making the education more relevant and exciting. This is the future of not only in education, in workforce. I mean, it has a lot of applications and has been used in a very limited way to this point, but is about to, become more of a household tool, just like our iPhones that is in the hand of everybody. So I think it's good to learn and be part of the groups that become, actually trainers that use this tool in teaching our youth.
Mhm.
So um, let me ask you, what do you have to share from your perspective for people that are watching this program? Maybe they are studying at the universities, or they're working on their, degrees, or they're writing their thesis. What are some of the areas, with education? Of course, you and I can, talk about what it does for us. But first with that, because I would like for you to share your perspective on the field, but what are some of the other fields that people should be thinking about as, needs in the future, and at the same time institution to look at, if you're not offering these programs, these are really some of the programs that you should be offering.
Yes, yes, yeah. I can say that there are a lot of changes that I've recognized happening, and I've been doing a lot of reading myself. I consider myself a lifelong learner in this area because there's always something new that's happening. There's always something new that's coming up, and because technology has had such a huge impact on the way we interact socially, the way we do business, the way we entertain ourselves, the way we access information, it has a global impact on creating this small global community. So it's no longer a difficulty to access somebody who's across the globe, or a difficulty to access information, or a difficulty to do a bank transaction, or to book a ticket to Hawaii, or it's all within a touch of your finger, basically, and being able to manipulate that technology within your field. I mean, I was working on a program for one of the countries that recently opened up, which is using augmented reality and virtual reality for a course on tourism, developing an interactive course on for English for tourism purposes, where they would be able to go and experience the actual setting through virtual reality, and then interact and engage. Very interesting simulation. But I feel that the subject areas there's a need to emphasize on virtual reality, but more in a practical sense. How can we use it effectively? How can we engage it within our life? There's also that human aspect related to life skills. Uh, a lot of uh, a lot of us are becoming more aware of the need for programs that highlight life skills, highlight mental skills, mental capacity, mental well-being, uh, all these social soft skills that are becoming less and less apparent because our children or the students are not engaging with other people as often as we would as children. So they haven't had that chance. So it's coming at a cost. So we're now having to teach or develop programs that focus on life skills, that focus on critical thinking, that focus on problem solving, that focus on the integration of technology, whether in education, whether in the way we sustain our living and our society. So there are plenty but the core area that I would think from it as an academic, from a educational background, life skills is a strong component and element, and mental health and social skills as well, and also that global social sciences, I would call it now, because we always used to study social studies when we were young, and that would focus on our society, the country we're in, and everything. But now that's no longer the case. they're becoming global citizens. They're becoming individuals who have access to global knowledge. There's global awareness. They need to learn more. They need to be more receptive to the differences, to the similarities, and so forth, and more engaging. So there's a lot that can be said about that. Yeah, yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, good example, this virus where, it was happening in any country, we were all worried about, when is it going to get to us? Because this is now a global, kind of phenomena. You
Yeah.
talk about supply chain, the same thing. It affects everybody. So really, we are connected, and we are more aware of it than ever before, and that's a good thing. I'm glad for that, because that will give us opportunities to learn more about each other and see how we can become one, community as human race, rather than focusing on our little corner and looking at our perspective as this is the whole world. So I know you started with introducing yourself as a global citizen, and I think you're a great citizen. So thank you for
Thank you.
your contribution to education industry, for what you do, and you being a guest in our program today. I truly appreciate you and your time. Would you like to leave a message or a communication with our audience before we say goodbye?
Thank you very much for having this, giving me this opportunity to share and to meet and to discuss with you. I just want to just point out that myself as Sally and Intellectus, that as educators, we all need to work together for education, for a better world. As you've said, we need to collaborate, we need to share experiences and create that better future for our children. And the pandemic itself, having it have an impact on all of our lives globally, just as proof of how things can change within a second. So collaboration and support, and we've been here to support that and give an outreach where we can bridge expertise, bridge collaboration and experiences across the world and globally. And I look forward to watching further podcasts from your end as well. Thank you so much, Abdi.
Very much. Have a wonderful day.
You too. You too.